Good morning, everyone. Is there anybody in the hall? Can you check, please? Okay, thank you. I'm back, in case the ones didn't know, so thank you for walking. I know they're usually bitching at me like there's no tomorrow. I understand that right now. So, short notice, but it's a great event. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce our director, Sean English.
First off, I definitely want to thank my UAW members that are here, especially this crew behind me too. So give us a short notice. This is what I mean about the U.A.W. family and union families. Short notice and we fill the room. So I just love, this is what it means to be family, you know. I'm here to talk about Carl. Wow, I'm gonna tell you what. He is probably one of the most resilient candidates that I have met. I have only been in this position 2 years, but I can tell you this: during the 2 years, from the moment that I met Carl, there's never been a time that he has not came out for the UAW. Yes.
That's right.
Carl says, was there anything you need for those picket lines when we did that stand-up strike? He was there. He was on those lines, walking those lines for our members. So, like I said, he wasn't just there for us, he was really there for us. Yes. I'm going to give a funny story because the day I met Carl was the day I had his competition. I don't know if Carl remembered this. And his competition was here talking to our members. And he stayed here for an hour. And I mean, that man told so many lies to my members sitting here. You know, we asked him a couple of times, hey, you know, you got some shops, would you make their union? You know, could we get a card check? No answer, no response. He definitely said he wasn't going to support the guy that was in office that's running for president. He gave us a no, he wouldn't. He stayed here continuously saying, hey, what he was going to do for this membership. But in reality, he done nothing. I go in there during that interview and I go talk to Carl, and Carl was full of life, full of energy. He knew if this union needed to be successful, and he knew it. When he was judged, he knew about the importance of mental health. We all know mental health is one of the serious issues that are affecting this country today. We know this. And I can tell you that we have had many mental illness conferences here, and they've been full. The walls have been full. But not only did Carl, he recognized that. Instead of locking people up, he started a program that helped those people. This is the type of person that we need at White House. This is the person we need. If you know anybody that lives in this district, we're going to need you to knock the doors. We need you to get out there and campaign. Because I'm going to tell you what I realized, as Democrats, we're not mad enough. We're not mad. I keep saying this word over and over. You're not mad enough. Because if you're mad, it leads to action. Or too quiet. The other side is mad. But there's a lot of reasons you should be mad. Because there's a lot of things on that ballot. And I know we're endorsing the president, VP Harris, but I'm gonna tell you what, she needs help all the way down the valley. And with that being said, we need Carl.
That's
The next time we introduce up here is Max from the AFL-CIOs. So give a round of applause for Max.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. English, Assistant Director Pecoraro. Thank you all. My name is Max Lewis. I am the Campaigns Field Director with the Michigan AFL-CIO, the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations. I am here on behalf of President Ron Bieber, who unfortunately couldn't make it today. But if folks don't know, the AFL-CIO here in Michigan, we represent 40+ affiliated unions, thousands of individual locals, and over 1 million active and retired members. And we're here because Carl Marlinga has stood for labor for decades. You know, Carl has secured endorsements from individual labor unions across all sectors of work. And a union endorsement does not come easily, it does not come lightly, but it comes because of value to that person. That person cares not just about union workers, but all workers in the middle class and folks who are still struggling to get by in their communities. That union endorsement means that person has those folks' backs. You don't just have to say that with Carl. Carl has shown this. You know, Carl brought U.A.W. representation into the prosecutor's office decades ago, back when it was not necessarily the most popular thing to do, but Carl did it because it was the right thing to do. And that is something that we can definitely count on as someone who knows, for Macomb, how do we do what is right by the workers who live here? You know? Macomb knows Carl Marlinga, and that is because he did not have to move here because it was politically advantageous for him. I think you may know who I'm talking about, but let's just say the audacity it takes to run for a district that you have never lived in, that you do not represent, but to say that you are the ones who should be the communities and those people's voice in Washington, it takes a certain type of arrogance that is unfamiliar to Carl, let's just say, you know. Carl has consistently said he would be a staunch supporter of the PRO Act in Washington, which is Protecting Rights to Organize Act, which, if you don't know, would be one of the most monumental pro-labor legislation that could be passed in Washington in modern history. It would get rid of corporate loopholes that allow for union busing. It would strengthen worker protection laws. And Carl has been a strong supporter of that. However, I know someone else who's been part of the Congress in Washington who refuses to take a vote on it. You know, John James has not had workers' backs. He's slick with his words, he's slick at talking, but look at his actions, he has not had workers' backs. You know, during the Republican primary for president this year, John James put his neck out early as one of the first to endorse Donald Trump here in Michigan. Donald Trump's policies have been some of the most damaging working policies in our modern history of our country. And that is the guy that John James is championing when he refuses to even take a vote on the PRO Act. You know, Macomb is one of the fastest growing counties in this state. Macomb is home to a large, diverse swath of workers, of people, of communities. We should do Macomb right and have a representative who is listening and who is there for them. Carl is there, and John James isn't even picking up the phone. So I have full confidence come this election season, We're going to see union members. We're going to see, UAW members. We're going to see postal workers, nurses, building tradesmen, building the infrastructure of our future. All across Macomb are going to come out and vote for Carl because they know he's a man of integrity, a man of value, and he's not just words, he's action. So thank you all very much.
I was so excited to talk about Carl when I first got up here, but I definitely want to make sure to let it be known that the UAW is endorsing Carl. Because we have a special guest here, and she was on time limit, and I wanted to make sure she got out of here on time. So I'm believing time. I don't want nobody to miss their flight. So I want to bring to the podium Catherine Clark. She is the Democratic Minority Whip.
English. Are we fired up? It's good to be back in Michigan. It's good to be back in a union hall. The last time I was in a Michigan union hall, I was joining the U.A.W. on the picket line. I'm so proud of what it means to be a union member and what it means to be a Michigan union member.
All right.
And all eyes are on Michigan. All eyes are on Michigan.
All right.
And we know that an economy that is about opportunity, that is centered around working people, starts right here. It's with every single one of you. It starts with a strong labor movement. I want to talk first about what we're seeing in Washington. We're seeing people like John James, who comes into these halls and talks a great deal about what he's going to do, how he's going to put priority of working families, the issues that keep you up at night, the jobs you're concerned about, the future for your children. And I see we have some teachers in the house. He says he's going to prioritize them, but then when he goes to Washington, he votes against working families 90% of the time. That is his score. 10%. 10% of the time, and you have to wonder what that is even about. But we're not fooled by him anymore. We know that they are afraid of the power in this room. They are afraid that when workers come together, when we demand that our voices be heard in the corridors of power, that things will happen that make it a true democracy. And that is not the vision that John James, who's endorsed Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, have for this country. They want to make the winner circle so small so that it's only the very wealthy and the already very connected. And you, us, we're not part of that picture. We are just supposed to do our work and not complain and make sure that the wealthier get wealthier. And we've got a lot of work to do. We want to build on what we did in the 117th when we had the gavels in our hands. The American Rescue Plan, the infrastructure law, the first gun safety bill in 30 years, making sure that we're bringing manufacturing back to these shores. And we want to make sure that while you are building America for us, we also have great public schools to send your kids to. That you can afford to buy a home and you look at your children and say they can afford to live here and raise their families here. That when you have children, that child care doesn't take up your entire paycheck. Because Carl understands this. The people of the 10th Congressional District, the people of Michigan, the people of our great country are in his DNA. He is centered around that. He's not going down to Washington to become part of a MAGA cult. He's going down to speak for you, to speak for you. And Max brought up the PRO Act. That is the top of our priority. And if you can't support the PRO Act, then you have no business showing your face in a union hall asking for They're afraid. They're afraid. They're afraid of the power in this room. They watched what you've done. They've watched the labor movement be in a renaissance. They've watched the investments that the Biden-Harris administration with Democrats in Congress have made in working people. We know the job isn't done, and that's why I'm here, because Carl knows strong unions are also built on an economy that is looking at people and saying, we gotta find a way to lower your costs. That you go to a grocery store and you actually think your paycheck can help feed your family. We want to continue on the work that we did without a single vote from Republicans to lower your health care costs. Kept insulin at $35 a month. Make sure you can afford a premium. These are things that matter to people. There are protections that union workers have. We want every single worker to know that health care is a right and not a privilege. This is the work that we began, and it's the work we need to finish. And all roads to the majority, to a pro-worker majority, lead through Michigan. And they lead through this and we're going to re-elect Hillary Sloan. We're going to elect Kristen McDonald-Riggett. We're going to elect Chris Patel. We're going to send Elizabeth Slaughter to the Senate. Today by sending in a pro-worker champion. Not a chameleon, not someone who's going to come into these halls, tell you what he thinks you want to hear. Someone who has a record of decades of putting working families first. That's why I'm here. That's why he's earned your endorsement. If we want a pro-worker Congress, let's send Carl Marlinga.
Acknowledgements. Those of you who know me know that being in a U.A.W. hall is very special to me. When I was a really young kid at the Michigan State Fair, Walter Reuther was shaking hands, and my father made sure that I got in line, and I could tell, you know, when you're a kid, you know when your father really has an interest, really admires somebody. And the look in his eye when I was shaking Walter Reuther's hands told me that this was a man of destiny, a man that I should honor, should revere. What he did for the middle class, he and others like you created the middle class in this country. But it wouldn't have been possible without the union movement. And so every time when I'm in a union hall, I get that same kind of spirit of Walter Reuther just kind of like enveloping me, saying, you're in the right place. And when I first met Director English, again, as Matt said, every union endorsement is important. Every time that you talk to people in the union, secretary, treasurer, business agent, president, whatever, you as a candidate, I will tell all of you, I think you know this, but if you don't, I'm telling you, our heart is in our throat because you will help decide our destiny. You are really important people. And of course, over the course of years, Steve Jokic, director here, eventually president of the U.A.W., and I were pretty close over the years. Other directors in this building. But suddenly, LaShawn English was the director, and I had never met her. And so I put on my suit, got my tie, sat waiting nervously, kind of like, I wonder what she's going to be like, you know. And then she invites me into her office, and she was the most gracious,
charming, wonderful person that I could possibly imagine. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if you ever even remember this, you talked about when you were younger, you had some of my Marlinga lawn signs. I thought, oh my God, this person likes me. And it was so meaningful for her personal charm and commitment, as well as for the legacy that she represents for the people in this building. Also, I want to thank Max Lewis for helping to organize this event. And there are a number of labor unions that are present today, and I would be remiss if I didn't point them out. The first would be the Michigan Education Association, Local 1 President. And when I started on this quest in 2022, and again in 2024, they were my first endorsement. And so you always remember that. The International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, that's a long title, Political Director, Chris Marcione, my good buddy back there. The Michigan Building Trades, the Michigan Regional Council of Carpenters and Millwrights. I had a good time with that. IBEW Local 58, Aspen, Michigan. Carpenters Local 636, and the Laborers Alina Local 1191. Thank you all for being here. We talked about some issues. I just want to draw some contrast and why this seat is so important. We know that the Democratic Party is 4 seats down from being able to retake the majority in the House of Representatives. Now that's important because if we don't, who remains in charge? Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson, the author of the 2025 agenda. Mike Johnson, the guy that supports a nationwide abortion ban. Mike Johnson, the election denier who tried to throw the election to Donald Trump on January 6th of 2021. If they are still in the majority, and if Mike Johnson is the speaker, instead of one of the finest gentlemen I've ever met, Hakeem Jeffries, just a great guy. Anyway, if Mike Johnson stays in power, we face an uphill battle on a whole bunch of issues, the ones I mentioned with abortion, but even the integrity of the election. And recently, with what the Supreme Court has shown us, if there is a legal dispute that arises out of the election, we now, and look, I'm a lawyer, I've been a judge, I have great respect for the American judicial system, but this gang of 6 that is now in charge of our Supreme Court are beyond anything that I've ever seen in my entire life. And you can't condemn for just results. Anyway, well, people like with Clark and others in the Congress are trying to move things forward, trying to enact the PRO Act. Protect the right to organize, all right? Make sure that you can't get fired for trying to organize. Make sure that employers can't reclassify people so they are, quote, independent contractors, but they're not really employees. Make sure that you can't suffer retaliation. Allow secondary support from other unions who might want to support you in your efforts, and also override and preempt the right to work for less laws in many states of the United States, like we have and we got rid of because of you. That's what the PRO Act will bring us. All right, now instead of supporting, let's have a round of applause. Instead of supporting that necessary piece of legislation to make life better for all of us, because let's face it, as Alyssa Slotkin would say, we in Michigan in unions created the middle class. If it weren't for us, people would not be able to own their own home, have vacation, have leave time. Even if you are not a member of the union, you've benefited from all of these things. People grow up nowadays thinking, well, this always had to be the case. Don't you always have 2 or 3 weeks vacation? Can't you always buy a snowmobile or have a place up north? No, all right? Employers, out of the goodness of their heart, are not going to say, oh, I feel so bad for my employees, I think I want to give them an extra week off, or I think I want to give them maternity leave. They didn't do that voluntarily. They never will. What we have to have is the pressure from strong unions like we have here to make sure that there's an even playing field. Instead of taking care of business and serving his constituents, Mr. James is all into the Mike Johnson 2025 agenda and making sure that their highest priority, that we have a nationwide abortion ban. No. I tell you, you can talk about this issue, but there's two sayings that I just want to quote. I think that they sum up the whole issue very well. One was carried by a young woman. In fact, Megan Cole, I think you're here. You might have been carrying this sign. It said, it was at a pro-choice rally. It said, if you don't like abortion, don't have one. All right?
That's right.
And that's basically it. Live how you want to live your life. Have your own way to live. But don't be talking about super articulate and charming vice presidential candidate, Tim Wall, says, it's the golden rule in Minnesota. None of your damn business. So instead of focusing on things that matter, John James is off in the ozone supporting these social, philosophical projects, appealing to very narrow issue of Republican conservatives, afraid to deviate. As a matter of fact, that's a part of my problem with John James. He comes from a good Democratic family. I stood gathering petition signatures. He for himself, he for me. He's introduced his kids to me. I mean, he can be a charming fellow, but it's just a surface charm. He has said about Donald Trump that the man is unfit for office, yet he embraces him and endorses him 2,000%. All right, so what kind of person does that believes a person is literally unfit to hold an office, but still is so obsequious, is so afraid of him that he will just be endorsing him anyway? That's the kind of politics that has made this country toxic. It's the fear, it's the inability to stand up for principle, it's the inability to be your own person. That's what we have in our current representative in Congress, which we're going to replace. Let's just talk about a couple of other issues. I know a person, I won't mention his name, but this is a lawyer who is near and dear to a lot of people in the U.A.W. because he's represented members and locals over the years. He currently has a condition in which he requires a drug once a month that costs, get this, $18,000 a month. Now, I'll admit that in having to develop drugs, there is some research. You might even have to go to the jungles of the Amazon to extract some elixir from a spider or from a flower. It's not the easiest thing to do. But let's face it, there are only so many elements in the periodic table. There are only so many ways that you can combine drugs. No matter how much work goes into making a particular drug and testing it, $18,000 a month, $216,000 a year is impossible to justify. Impossible. All right. Now, because he has insurance, this is going to be paid for. But the Mike Johnsons, the John James, they don't understand how ordinary folks like us can absolutely have our lives crippled by having to pay high drug costs. They don't even appreciate that insulin needs to be capped at $35 a month because they say, well, it can't cost that much. And there are other life-saving, life-sustaining drugs that they just kind of walk away from because they don't think that it's their business, that they don't want to get involved in this. We have in Kamala Harris a leader who wants to cap insulin prices, fight for consumers and the things that matter to us, drug prices, the grocery prices, things that we spend on, that we have to spend on, that we have no choice because you got to have food, you have to have medication. you know, I mean, the pharmaceutical companies have us over a barrel. It's not a free market, all right? When you are walking to get a prescription filled, and the doctor says, if you don't get this filled, you might die, right? In my business as a prosecutor and a judge, that's a lot like extortion, okay? You don't have a choice. And knowing that you don't have a choice, they can set the price anywhere that they damn well please in order to get as much money as they can so that they can have the extra yacht. And it's wrong. And we don't have people in Congress who are standing up to them, and we don't have people in Congress who are making sure that the insurance coverage extends to all, and that the common drugs that are life-saving, like insulin, are affordable at a reasonable price. And I've also heard the complaint about Kamala Harris's plan to have vigorous enforcement of the laws to make sure there's not a price gouging going on. Some people are accusing her falsely, completely falsely, of trying to set prices. No, 37 states have laws like this, and attorneys general throughout the various states enforce it anyway. We're just talking about the additional enforcement on the federal level where it's most effective and do the most good. And so her plan is, I'm all in for it. But John James and the Republican phalanx over there is not. And last, I got to mention this. I grew up in my parents were the sons and daughter of immigrants. They didn't have a lot of money. Of course, when you're a kid, you don't know you don't have a lot of money because you're a kid. You know, you have your friends, you have your fun. You don't know that you're poor. But the fact of the matter is, we were poor. Because neither one of them finished high school, we were always worried as a Catholic parents, they wanted to make sure that I had, that I had a good Catholic education. It was important to them. I understand why. And so they sent me to parochial schools for grade school and high school, and I appreciate their sacrifice. But I know, again, talking to my father and my mother, they said, yeah, we do this, but we understand that there's still an obligation for us to support our public schools because public schools are important to support the entire education of all of the people in the United States. And they didn't complain once about the tuition that they paid, and they didn't expect any handout from the federal government. They didn't expect any tax dollars to go support their educational system that they wanted to send me. It was just wrong in their mind. And yet John James last week announced this program where he wants to divert money to take tax dollars and put it into private religious education. You get a tax credit, meaning that instead of having to pay your taxes to the government and then the government gives the money to the school, you give it directly and you get a tax break because of it. That is so fundamentally, morally wrong. It's anti-American, and yet he blithely goes about doing it because he's, again, appealing to his narrow group of supporters, afraid to lose them. So, we have some work to do, but seeing this crowd makes me energized, and I realize that the work is going to be done. I saw all the cars in the parking lot, you know, and I walked in. Hey guys. I walked in, and I met somebody at the door, and I said, "What are you guys here for?" They said, "It's for you." And at first, I thought he was just kind of like, I thought it was some other kind of meeting, but no, it was for me, and I am just shaking with gratitude to know that on very short notice, you know, Catherine Clark and I had a breakfast downtown, and knowing that she was coming in downtown for that, we said, well, maybe we can get something put together quickly. Yeah, we can put it together quickly. It's magnificent. I'm over the top with gratitude for what you've done. Now let's go on and win this seat. anybody up, but we need a picture with Carl. To take a question if you think it's important. So, any questions? Let me know.
I really appreciate your legal background as a lawyer and as a judge. And we all know about the recent shooting in Georgia with the two teachers and two children now were murdered. And you have a very good interpretation of the Second Amendment and how that means is directed to assault weapons. Can you elaborate in terms of the Second Amendment a little bit about how we can protect our children in schools?
Okay, look at, and this will get awkward if we keep on asking questions, but I will answer this one because there are three Supreme Court decisions which is absolutely driving over the edge. One of them is the Dobbs decision overturning Roe versus Wade. The Ninth Amendment, where justices who profess to read the Constitution says that the listing of some rights in the Bill of Rights is not exhaustive. There are other rights. And so in 1972, when the Supreme Court declared the right to reproductive freedom, that was assumed to be a part of the Ninth Amendment. After 50 years, one pivotal life of the Republic, they decided to change it. No judicial philosophy allows that. They also said that with regard to bump stocks, that bump stocks could turn semi-automatic weapons into machine guns, and that was protected by the Second Amendment. These guys are supposed to be conservatives, supposed to have an historical perspective. At the time that the Second Amendment was passed, there were single-shot rifles, single-shot pistols, single-shot muskets. You didn't have automatic weapons. And so if they were thinking about the reality of an historical perspective, they would say, this is beyond the range of the Second Amendment. Also, remember, the Second Amendment was originally passed to be a restriction on the federal government of the United States. States were free, and until 2013, remained free to make any law they wanted, including, if you wanted to go that far, that the ownership or possession or use of weapons is prohibited. That would not be violative of the Second Amendment because the Second Amendment was only there to restrict the government of the United States. And of course, the last one, the big one, is when they said that presidents are like kings, we will grant them immunity in their official duties. They took a person who's fundamentally lawless to start with and basically said, if you're president again, you can commit any crime you want as president, you can't be prosecuted. That is nuts. The framers would be rolling in their graves. It's un-American. It's anti-constitutional. It's not just unconstitutional, it's anti. Yes, one more. Go.
Can I say something really quick, Carl? Is that okay?
So,
I just wanted to say, some of you might know me, I ran against Lisa McLean. I just want to say Carl has done so much for my life. Please support him if you can. He is such a kind, considerate man. He is such a powerful man. And he's listened to me and put up with me and helped me in so many situations. Just please support him if you can. And John James' economic policies are illusory at best. His economic policies are counterproductive to any working person within the United States of America, and I wish you the best.
You're good, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome, Carl, to my house, U.A.W. I want to know, do you support a limitation for the Supreme Court justice?
You support what?
The Supreme Court justice no longer being lifetime jobs.
Oh, yes. Okay, now look at, until these last three decisions, I was kind of a judicial moderate saying, look, there is a reason why we have lifetime appointments, and it was to keep people out of partisan battles so that they wouldn't take sides, so that they would be objective. But the recent history of these appointments where three members of the bench took the Supreme Court bench because they lied about what they would do in Roe versus Wade convinced me that this is not a trustworthy bunch. And the whole theory of the founders that said, we want to make this objective, we don't want political pressure, has been turned upside down. Now these people are political operatives. They've changed the ground rules, and so we have to change the ground rules. We should have one justice for every 13 districts, circuits, and so that means 4 more. And beyond that, we have to have an ethics pledge that they all sign so that they will know that they will be impeached and removed if they don't follow the ethics. And then ultimately, we have to set term limits on Supreme Court justices.